You're listening to Talk Daredevil, a podcast about all things Daredevil in the greater Marvel Universe, brought to you by the women behind Saved Daredevil.
Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Talk Daredevil. It's been a minute since I've been on the speed, but I am Phyllis and I am joined by my fellow team member on the other side of the world.
Hi, I'm Christine.
So this is going to be a little bit different from our usual pods and episode discussions. You could probably consider this an exciting little bonus for the Fandom Without Fear. Today we had the pleasure of chatting with Daredevil Born Again showrunner Dario Scardapane and executive producer Sana Amanat.
And it was a great conversation, and we are so delighted and grateful that they were willing to come and talk to us. And we hope you guys enjoy it too, as much as we did.
Yeah. And our hope this won't be the last time we speak with folks involved on Daredevil Born Again, but in the meantime, we are looking forward to hearing what you think. We are Saved Daredevil on Twitter, X, and Save Daredevil everywhere else. We're also going to have 2 more episodes coming up to cover the remainder of season 1, another review episode for episodes 5, 6, 7, and our final review episode will be dedicated to the penultimate and finale episodes 8 and 9. So thanks again for listening, and please enjoy our conversation with Dario and Sana. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. Obviously, it's thrilling on so many different levels to have the opportunity to do this, and just want to kind of get that out of the way that we're really appreciative.
Hey, thanks for saving Daredevil, man.
So far, it's been worth it. We're really enjoying season 1.
Yeah, worth the wait.
Strap in. I mean, the last 2 are something else.
We're going to try to resist the urge to ask too specific of questions. So obviously, being part of the Save Daredevil campaign, we've kind of been there since the moment of cancellation till now. And so given that very long journey of getting the show back onto the screen, we'd really love to kind of hear about how you both got individually involved with Daredevil Born Again, and what were your reactions to getting asked to help bring Daredevil back onto TV?
Sana got involved before I did.
We're going to kick it off?
Yeah.
Hand off? Yeah, well, I mean, I've been at Marvel for a very, very long time. So I've been kicking around. I was coming off of Miss Marvel, deving of some other projects, and I got a call from Kevin and Brad being like, hey, we're just going to put you on Daredevil. And first of all, I will say, be careful what you wish for, because maybe 3 months before, 6 months before, I was like, I don't understand when I'm not working on Daredevil, because it was already, the writer's room was going. There were like people, like there was another executive on it. And I was like, it just makes no sense. Like, I love this character. I was just very jealous. And I said it out loud, and like literally 3 months later or whatever it was, I was on it. So I joined while, it was actually halfway. It was in development already. The writer's room was open. We were about to head into prep. So I was sort of there to kick off the production. And, the writer's strike happened and all those things. And the biggest thing, and this is like, I've said this before, which is very truthful, it wasn't my Daredevil. It wasn't the kind of show that I really wanted us to make. And I was saying it all the time to our executives. And after we had... And again, it had nothing to do with the writing or the performances. It just wasn't the drama and sort of the history that we love about Daredevil. And I edited the comic. So for me, it was like multi-layered. And of course, I love the old show. And so when the strike happened, we had time to assess everything and find ways in which we could say, okay, well, maybe let's change course. And then I will let Dario talk about how I pulled him into this podcast.
And then I got a phone call about 4 days after the strike ended. And it was one of those things where, I'm like, I've been sitting around for 5 months. So I've got all my plans, right? And my agent's on the phone. And I'm like, oh, I want to do X, Y, and Z. And she's like, hold on, just shut up for a second. I need to tell you something. I'm like, oh, hey, I wanted to do this and meet with this person. She's like, Dario, shut up. What do you think about coming on to do Daredevil Born Again? And I was like, oh, shit, done. Like it was. And then, I came down, I met Sana. I had an idea after seeing, and they kind of gave me a whole bunch of material. And I took a look at it. I was like, hold on, I think there's a path here. And I went in and talked to those guys, and it was really a meeting of the minds pretty quickly. And it had to be pretty quickly because we had 0 time. And then it was like this thing. For me, that was one of those dream phone calls. You know, I had been in the world with the Punisher. Daredevil, like I just said to you guys as I'm packing up my comic books, they're the old ones that I walked in and bought 40 years ago. And I felt much like you guys did, and all of us in the old iteration of those shows didn't end because they were done telling story. Those shows ended because of corporate stuff. So getting a chance to come back and kind of finish the story or move the story forward that always wanted to be. And then the weird benefit of having the 7 years in between. So now these characters could mature. We could pick them up 7 years later. It was really exciting, you know, terrifying and exciting at the same time.
And such credit to Dario, because like I only had a couple of days. The strike ended and my bosses were like, go find somebody now. And so it was really like it was a hustle. It was really, really crazy in terms of the amount of time and people that we talked to. And the biggest thing for me with Dario outside of, I mean, I loved his writing, but it was like also he was just such a fan and he knew the material and obviously the connection to Punisher. I was like all those elements together. And we had a great time talking. I remember when he pitched one of the sequences, which is coming up at the end of the season. Brad was texting me because we're at the same time. Brad's like, oh, I think we have a contender. It was really
well, it was the funny thing with Sana and I is that it was an instant kind of click because in the same way which she just said, this wasn't her show. Like it wasn't a bad show. There wasn't anything like wrong with it, but you knew, and it's probably the way you guys feel too. You know, when you're in that place that is Daredevil. And that's been one of the things that we're trying to do. And it's kind of thing that keeps us honest. We want to not just be a total reiteration of the old show, but we don't want to go so far afield that it doesn't feel like the show. So we're constantly trying to be in two places at once and have them both be satisfying. And I think Sana and I understood that in a visceral level the second we started talking. And that made it a lot easier because all first season shows are a nightmare because you're always trying to figure out what the show is. The other day when Brad said, oh, wow, it's so nice to have the show in its second season. And it's like, yeah, it is.
Actually, on that topic, because I mean, this is a unique experience how you came into it, but also this show is both a continuation in a way, but also a revival at the same time. And it's quite unique, actually. I guess shows have been saved after quite a bit of time in the past before other shows, but I mean, it's not common. But I mean, that must have come with its own set of challenges. And you also already have a fan base, us and people like us. So did you, was there an awareness of how, these fan expectations as you worked on the show and what's it like to hear from these fans now?
It's weird. I mean, I'm not used to it, honestly. We didn't have the same level of, 7 years ago or 8 years ago when we were doing The Punisher, you didn't have what I would call the level of engagement or the level of the fandom was there, but I don't think it had these means like it does now. And it's a really funny thing. And I'll be as honest as I can about it. You want to hear what people want and what people think and how they feel about it, but you can't buy into it 100% because in the same way, like if you guys are reading something that's exactly what you want and expect, there's no fun. So you want to be mindful of audience expectations, but then you want to challenge those, and that becomes it becomes a dance.
Yeah, I mean, I've been at Marvel for a long time. I think Dario wasn't used to it because he wasn't on social media.
There's that.
Like, whoa, people are talking about this. I'm like, Dario, they're always talking about this.
I'm very lucky that my wife curates all of that. So my Instagram account I never see. So it helps.
He's on now, and I think he's seeing all the reactions. And I'm sure it's by the way, it's all just very overwhelming. And because I've been at Marvel for so long, I've seen every reaction. I know how the fan community is, and sometimes it can be very mean, but for the most part, I have found it to be a really wonderful community where we get inspiration from them. I feel like there's a lot of great ideas too. We're listening. There's some things we're like, oh yeah, that is interesting. And then of course there are others we're like, no, there's a different direction. Like Dario said, hopefully you're going to love it. Like we have to challenge them. But it is absolutely a balance. Like we do want fans to be happy and excited, because also we're fans and we want to be happy and excited. So we're always going to come from that place. We'll just maybe have different taste at times. But it is exceptionally, exceptionally important to us. Like when I go to conventions and Comic-Cons and all that, I really feel like I'm coming home. And to me, that love, and that excitement, if that's there, I really feel like really proud of the work that we've done, and we're feeling it.
Yeah. And it's not just, it is the entire crew in terms of, Phil Silvera is a huge fan. A lot of the line when Frank came and visited set, the line of crew members waiting to get their comics and posters signed was pretty cool. I've only worked on a very few shows like this where everybody, the crew, the cast, the creatives, the executives, everybody's all in on this. And that makes it easier, but it also raises the bar. So you're constantly head checking how this is going to play, what people are going to think. Is this good enough? We're brutal on ourselves at this point.
I wanted to just sort of talk about the handling of Matt's senses on the show, both heightened and missing. I always say the last one is important too. This has been something kind of a special niche interest of mine for many, many years, kind of my claim to fame in the fandom. And I was just wondering how you sort of approach this natural constraints that comes with writing a character with the sort of physical and sensory constraints that he's got going on, how you approach that narratively.
Well, that's one of the things that always drew me to Daredevil. And I think I've said this in other interviews. I think people respond to this character because of his vulnerability. And that gives it a vulnerability and it gives it a different. I've done really dumb things in scripts, like Matt hands the binoculars to Carrot, and I've learned and kind of pivoted in a way where how he experiences the world, I have to think of completely cinematically. And that's really fun. Like a lot of times you get caught up in words and in your scene direction, you assume too much. And when writing, particularly the action sequences, but a lot of other sequences, and Charlie keeps me really honest on this, you have to think 100%, what does it look like, sound like? How do we get that across? And the guys, Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, and our amazing DP Hillary, came up with, as you see in the pilot, a way of shooting how he perceives the world. We call it sensory grande. And it's, now that we know, it's one of those things where the tools of the camera informs the tools of the writing. So I constantly work in the scripts. What are the moments that we're in his head, how he perceives the world?
Speaking of like the first episode, I did see that aspect ratio thing, which was very cool. But there's also one thing I've noticed that this show does really well is sort of also the shifting of attention. That sort of the spotlight of attention is something that's sort of universal to human perception in general, and how you can't take in everything at once. And I don't know how to explain it really, but I think that's been one thing I've really enjoyed. You can kind of see the details there. And I think also, of course, Charlie at this point, he's got this whole body language to go with it, the way he just kind of shifts his head, which also makes sense scientifically, by the way, that you would do that. So all of that's super cool.
Our DP Hillary was really involved also in just like, we talked a lot about obscuring things, like obscurity, and how you can do that within the lens itself. So we were doing things both like in camera and in post, like things like barrel distortion. It's like you can barely kind of see things, like as he's trying to quote unquote see, like just his POV is really intriguing to us. Having elements in the foreground that are slightly obscuring everything. By the way, it's not just in Matt's POV, like we're trying to have that across the entire show, is like, how can you deal with distortion and obscurity in different places? So it feels like, oh, I see, it looks like the real world, but there's something slightly off in places, because we want that to be a part of the whole show. But yeah, that in combination with Charlie, who's a stickler, who will be like, I don't know if I would be doing it like this, just letting you know. And he keeps us honest.
Yeah. I can tell when, hey, mate, you got a moment? I'm like, all right, I'm going to be redoing a whole bunch of the sensory stuff.
I mean, speaking of Charlie, we just want to kind of take a moment to show Charlie and Vincent just some massive love, because in addition to being exceptional actors, they're obviously such fans of the characters they play. And, kind of wondering what it's meant for the both of you, having these two actors that have had so much time to build and refine these characters on screen. Obviously they're working with great writing and great direction, but at some point are you just we just got to let them cook. We just got to let them do their thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's funny. They make my job easy. And in a way, they're constantly challenging the writing in a good way. One of the things that I love about the show, and I loved it when I was watching it, and I love it now that writing it, if you put those two in a room together, you have to be on point. You're going to get an amazing scene, but you also have to create something cool. That's just the best way of putting it. Anytime it's the two of them, you're going to kind of pull out all the stops, and so are they. So that's really fun. And what's amazing also is you're constantly playing with keeping them apart so that you can pick your moments of putting them together. And then each of them, Vincent has a very, 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 very specific vibe, for lack of a better word, when he is playing Fisk. And you write to that. And same with Charlie. And it really becomes a collaboration, even when you're not taking their notes. You're thinking how, with Vincent, and I don't want to get technical here, but Fisk has specific speech rhythms, and he speaks in flat declarative sentences. And if you're in that rhythm, you're there. If you're not, it's super obvious. Vincent picks up on it. He's just like, no. And with Charlie, there are spaces inside both motion and dialogue that are really, really important, and you work those. So it's it sounds very weird, but what you're working with, so you play towards that. And with these two, it's very specific and it's really strong.
And they know these characters so well, right? They probably know these characters at this point now better than anyone. So you just have to trust some of their instincts. I remember when Vincent was we're talking about, well, now that you guys have watched everything, I'm assuming, right? And hopefully, spoiler for anyone listening, but, we're talking a bit about Vanessa's, the affair that happened. And it was very much him being like, well, I wouldn't, you know what? Kingpin wouldn't kill the guy. Kingpin would have him in his basement. He would keep the promise, but Kingpin would torture him in his basement. And I'm like, oh my God, you have a dark mind.
I remember that discussion. And then also when he goes to confront Adam, we're originally it was a hammer and then it was a bat. And Vincent's like, no, it must be an axe. Okay. Yeah.
Well, a hammer might be too on the nose.
Exactly. And I think hammer turned to bat, turned to axe. And we were like, yes.
Yeah. So, of course, as members of the Save Daredevil campaign, we have to ask, do you have any favorite moments from the original Daredevil show? And were those moments that impacted what you wanted to do with Born Again?
7 Minutes in Heaven for me goes down in my pantheon of epic action sequences. And for me, it's the moment when John looks up and sees Fisk. It's kind of perfect action storytelling. A lot of people cite Phil's hallway thing. There's a couple. It Makes Me Feel Alone, 7 Minutes in Heaven, and Fisk and the car door with the Russian mobster. Those are, I tend to gravitate towards the extremely poetic violence.
I have so many favorites. I absolutely love the Bullseye Daredevil fight in the Bulletin in season 3. I thought that was amazing. The one outside of the detention center. Sorry, these are all action sequences. Clearly, I love. It was just so it said for both of those. I'm like, it showed how great Daredevil fights. It shows his prowess. It shows how awesome Bullseye is, what he does, and how scary and creepy he is. I love the way that that sequence was shot. I loved Daredevil, and I just love Daredevil and Punisher just like yelling at each other in general. Like, just really enjoy that. So the rooftop sequence. I love also Punisher and Karen in any scenes together. So when the first scene where she like showed up, I think it was in the hospital room alone. And I was like, oh, interesting. I was like, there's some energy here. Yeah. So many. I love the old show so much.
Well, I think it's safe to say that Frank and Matt reunion in episode 4 is like immediate fan favorite moment from Born Again. If you can, we'd love to hear a little bit more about like how that scene sort of came to be. Because I think he's done some interviews about it. It wasn't always a given.
So what's funny is that is a scene that happened before my tenure. It was written by Jesse Wigatow, who's amazing and one of our like stellar writers. It sets the stage, and we tweaked it ever so slightly, but not much, setting the stage for stuff that's going to come later. But finally putting those two together for me, when I saw that was like, we keep this, we use this, we moved it. We did a lot of different things with it to make it kind of at the perfect place. But Sana would know more about the creation of that scene than I do.
Yeah, I mean, John was very, very involved. He's very particular about the way this character is represented, just like the other, like Charlie and Vincent are. There were many different iterations that were being worked on. And at this point, it was really more about, okay, if Frank is in this world, it's really just about establishing the fact that he's back in the world, establishing that there is some connection awareness of these Punisher cops that are out there, which I think, how does he feel about that? But the most interesting thing is always Punisher said to him, you're just one bad day away from being me. And he had it, right?
Yeah,
he had
that bad day.
He had that bad day. So we thought like it would be most interesting if it actually was just a simple emotional moment. Like Matt comes there for business and he knows that's not what it is. And I feel like when Frank challenges him, it makes his character, he's talking about things that no one is talking to Matt about. It makes it more interesting. So we really ended up simplifying it. It was a lot more complicated before, but John kept pushing back and he's like, no, this is not what I would be doing. No, I would not be going out and chasing and killing all the Punisher cops. I have a very singular mission. And so it actually ended up becoming so much more, I think, beautiful because of it. John was very much like with Jesse helping to shape that scene. So I think it came out really, really, really well.
Yeah, and it's an amazing scene. And I know that when we were all watching it, we're like, we know he's in this episode because he's in the he's in the photo on the episode when you hit play, and we're like, when is he going to come out? When is he going to come out? So, and when he did, it was very satisfying.
Yeah, felt very authentic and raw.
All I can say is just you wait.
Oh, okay.
Well, I've seen some just brief images from various teasers and trailers, but yeah, should be exciting.
I love working with John. It was so fun. It's literally like 7 years later to be on set again.
I mean, anything you can mention about the one-off that they're going to do with
That's
him?
Not me.
Or okay,
not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. We're kind of into it now, and more. Yes.
Okay. But we're very excited for that one as well. So I know we're kind of reaching the end of our time together. We want to be respectful that, we have this limited window. So maybe one more question and then we can kind of wrap it up.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of to go back to, you were talking before about, still wanting to surprise fans, because if everybody knew what was coming, it wouldn't be as much fun. But, because Daredevil has had such a long history, both now on screen and also the comics, how do you keep those fresh new ideas flowing? And what is the right balance between sort of paying your respect to the source material and writing something new?
So we've actually kind of, and I think Sana can speak to this as well with me on it, we've kind of fallen into an interesting process, which is we have the books And Sana brings books into the writer's room all the time. We all kind of we have the old comic books, and there'll be something like the Mayor Fisk run. There'll be a run or an idea or even a keyframe. And we'll look at that and then we'll be like, okay, how do we do that in the spirit of what's in the book, but maybe a little differently? Or there'll be a character. Cole North is a really good example. There's a character that's in canon that we bring into our world, but everybody knows what happens with this character. But maybe we take that character a little different path, so it's that idea of we go back to the source, we kind of put it in the cooker, we bang it around, we try and stay with the spirit of it, but do something different and throw a curveball around it and give you, it's so fun to work with these iconic characters that expand 4 or 5 decades. And you can grab a character or you can grab a storyline and people will be like, oh, this is going to be, and they're like, well, yes, but, and it goes a different direction. And that's kind of our process. We start with an idea, and maybe it's like Fisk is the mayor. Okay, that's Mayor Fisk. But then what does that mean for New York? How does the resistance rise? And then that becomes a little bit of a different storyline, and we go and we mine other characters and we bring different things into the cooker. So it's a constant kind of dialogue with the past, with canon, and with a room full of really good writers, and with the fans. So I've never had more cooks in a kitchen before, but since everybody's kind of a fan, it makes it fun, and you have an embarrassment of riches.
Yeah, and between both comics, between the comics and the shows, we are sort of building a new mythology. It's just kind of the nature of things. There's new storylines and directions that we want to start following that feel more organic and natural, but they're all built off of obviously the original source material. That will always be the foundation of everything we do. And of course, I say this as someone who's been making comics for such a long time, and it's so important to me. And I think what I've learned over the years and the many iterations of characters, even just that we've made, it's there is sort of an anchor point for all of our characters. And we all know what that is. They swing in different directions, and storylines swing in different directions, but you have to know ultimately who characters are and what their philosophy, their ethics are, and build story around that. Because if you do that, then you will do both new and things that you've seen before. And I think that's what makes it very, very successful. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to maybe hopefully have, similar arcs to what you've seen, but we're going to start them maybe on a darker path and try to find, and then maybe we'll bring them back. I don't know. We have to follow the story that we have in front of us. I think ultimately it comes down to really strong and good storytelling and not changing really sort of the foundation of these characters. And that's really what we hope we're doing a good job with, and we'll try to continue to do.
Yeah, you really are. I think it's so much fun for, especially long-time comic book fans to even see, even if it's out of context from relative to the original story. It's the way just that montage, the way that scene was shot is reminiscent of something, and it's such a fun, it's its own genre of Easter eggs almost. So really appreciate it.
Well, I think we're kind of up on time. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you so much for having this conversation with us. It was so much fun.
Thank you for listening to Talk Daredevil. For more information about Saved Daredevil, including links to our socials, please visit us at savedaredevil.com. Remember, Murdochs always get back up.